So I just got over a sickness. I'm not sure how long I'm really going to make this, but I kind of just wanted to talk a little bit. I don't think it's really going to be important or imperative for anyone to listen, but it's always nice to kind of express things. Also, my mustache looks terrible. God. I think at least in the short term, for a lot of people, we have this projected or this sort of perceived idea of what escapism and wokeism and other general moral or I guess like existential facing questions might be in our minds. And I don't always think that that's inherently a good or bad thing. But there is definitely a cost with it. And maybe it's not subjective nor objective. It's sort of an in-between, because it could be that there is some factual basis for certain things, or there are some study analysis of things. But I also think that it's entirely possible that it's so varied for each person. It's kind of like an individual's idea of theology or any kind of morality, where it's an in-between or a gray zone that doesn't really fit. So one thing I kind of say and I kind of practice, even if I don't mean to, is this idea of like this leftist wokeism, but not the fake corporate wokeism that was kind of popularized a couple years ago, where bigger companies can sort of buy trending or buy virality online through either marketing campaigns or these sort of outreaches and these faux charity presentations that they do. And I think that's really despicable to an extent. But the problem is, it's that separate the art from the artist debate that's been going on for centuries, where can you take the actions or the immoral choices that somebody makes and then critique that as separate but equal to the beauty of their art? Or do you have to take the forward-facing fact of that person as a whole and then debate or degrade anything that they may make in an artistic level, especially, as being something that is not worthy of presentation or not of merit or of value to society because of their overall character, we'll say. Famous examples of that are not as open, but it could be musicians, for example. Do you like R. Kelly songs? Do you like David Bowie songs? Which, by the way, I do, but he was probably a pedophile, in all honesty, or at least practice things that were very morally questionable, not to get into too specific of an idea. And that becomes a person-to-person question. And there are some things where maybe the line is drawn, and maybe that's a sort of open interpretation. Some art you might find, but you can't ever like a Hitler painting, and that's totally understandable. That idea of corporate entities vying for power or buying a vote, even if it's just in popular opinion or entering the lexicon because of these things that they do, is a little bit different, because the idea is that those companies are, at least in theory, not presenting something that's totally bad, and as such are maybe falsely buying or falsely promoting themselves with causes or with concerns that they don't align with, or they simply are uninterested in. And as a result, you might think that's disingenuous, and so it's a bad thing. And I don't disagree with that assessment, at least from a personal level. However, I will say that that, quote, wokeism is inherently good if the money is thusly used for good causes. It could be things like cancer research. It could be things like youth medicines. It could be for medicine in foreign nations. It could be for the investment of infrastructure. It could be building, any of these sorts of networks or these sorts of maybe not political or infrastructure based, but projects which are good. The same could also be true for like more liquid assets. There are charities that literally will go to particularly Africa, but also certain parts of Latin America, and what we would say is the underdeveloped world, or more third world, which I think is probably too pejorative of a term, but would then buy like actual livestock for them. And I've been in part involved in those charities from high school onward, and I really do like that sort of thing. I think that it's a visual and a tangible effort to a noticeable problem in a community. Now, when those companies or when those organizations do that, there is the idea that does that outweigh sort of the moral falsehoods or the moral ambiguity of such an action? And ultimately, that's a choice, again, that you'll have to make, but I think is important. The reason I think about that, and I think I just got over being sick, so I've been kind of just addressing things internally, is that it then plays into the larger idea of what is the overall cost of wokeism in an individual, and what moral questions or moral facets do you have to face as an individual in order to be, I guess, okay, or at least deemed acceptable in your own mind. I had to fix my hair. And I still don't know that. For example, I am, as I mentioned, kind of this left-leaning hippie scumbag. I didn't choose this way. But there's just this sort of escapism and this sort of niceness that I try and employ, even though I think that it is very much a falsehood. There's certain things I don't really wish to get into detail because, again, that kind of defeats the whole point. It would be hypocritical. But, like, for example, I bought bamboo toilet paper because it's considered more recyclable, or it's all through foreign source objects, which are not only cheaper, effective, but also are not as impactful to trees. And overall, it's supposed to be a lot greener or green friendly. Do I think that that will make a virtual difference? No. If every single human alive switched to that sort of product, I still don't think that it would overall take sort of the effort or the measure away from deforestation, because frankly, wood is used for a lot more, and pulping, and as far as I understand, forestry as a whole has very little impact on the overall deforestation margins, or sort of that practice. It doesn't stop it. So for, let's say every American, 300 million people only buy bamboo toilet paper from now on, that still would not make a foreseeable impact. Though, of course, the markets through which Americans are the primary, I'd say, users or the primary buyers of those products may ultimately change. For example, if America's 33% of the overall petrol use in the world, and they switch to only electronic or to wind sources for power, then that does eliminate 33% of the consumption. Prices and margins for that, of course, are dramatically impacted, and it's not as though it's a one-for-one. So those sorts of analyses or those sorts of parables are not really timely. And unfortunately, that sort of a market change is so improbable or impractical that making that as a comparison is not really a fair statement, or it's not really a fair assessment. With me, I think that that is just an example of that sort of really bullshit wokeism, where I recognize that even if it's a 0.00001 or 0.0 to the 20th power of 10% change, that margin is so tiny that it's negligible in every single way, or trivial beyond belief. But for me, I have to do that as sort of my practice or my understanding and how I want to live and how I want to be a consumer. And that sort of escapism is, that sort of thing is also seen in kind of the escapism that I practice. I recognize that that's unhealthy, and then comparing the market trend of doing something green friendly with my own escapism or with my own ventures into that sort of hobbyism and denialism of, I guess, my own belief or morality can be very subjectively hypocritical, excuse me. So, for example, a lot of things I do, I play video games, I like card games, I use electricity on a daily basis for essentially recreational purposes, regardless of what you might say. So that already, even if it could be seen as a livable, renewable energy source, is not the best, right? And there's plenty of practices of that. Even just like a month ago, I just straight up threw away a bunch of Magic cards that were just like bulk, just useless. Is that important? Not really, no. I try and donate those or give those to like families around me. I'll post on our Facebook groups and on our meetings, hey, come pick this up. So that's an example of where you can avoid that. But there are also times where I'm just, I'm tired, I'm sick, I don't feel like it. I'm just going to throw this box away. And then it happens. And that escapism is this weird duality of like willful suspension of my own morality, and then a willful ignorance or just a simple denial of that practice to the point where it's not even thought about. And I had to sort of go over my actions and think, oh, I've done this, or oh, I've done that sort of thing. And so you get into this weird conundrum where with consumerism, with escapism, just the overall sort of reality that you choose to perceive is ultimately so blended with your own idea of convenience, at least in the Western perspective. I think that each culture probably has some different versions of this, that you are so utterly unable to escape that mindset. Even if you try and change your paradigm, which is just a state of mind of thinking. Sorry if I use certain words that are stupid or overly complex for no reason. Not even complex, because that belittles, so that's condescending. But I will try and define things and keep it as simple vernacular as possible. You get into this sort of head game where you might believe something internally, and you have this sort of projected ideology of what you want to be as a person. But then the modernity and the struggle of modernity places you in such a capacity that you reject that, not intentionally and not knowingly. And that happens in so many ways that it's this ugly, ugly concept. Are you to blame is then the question. And I think each person has to just sit down and sort of say what they're willing to do, what they're willing to put up with, and what concepts or what, how do you say this? What broaches of your personal comfort zone are you capable with making, or what are you capable of breaching, I should say, without it becoming this vilified stance that you've taken against yourself, or this sort of self-deprecating thing. Now, it's totally okay to be critical. I've given a couple of examples. I'm far harsher than I would say on video to myself, to a very negative, and I would say like mentally ill point. But I think that it's very important to note that finding the difference, or finding that level that's good for you, because each person, I might be here in terms of what I believe in and what I can think is viable for my actions. You might be down below, or you might be above, and you hold yourself to a different standard. Finding that, and then finding that as something that's not compromised to other people's view, is really the only challenge that I think people should adhere to, without being destructive or without being malicious to any point. Now, of course, there are instances of personal greed. Now, I wouldn't necessarily speak to personal greed as being bad or good. It's another situation where there's too much ambivalence to that, or it's too much gray, that the idea or the dialogue that taking choices for yourself that are satisfactory, like that escapism, are not inherently any form of tied emotion or any kind of response that you should equate to a moral choice. The ambiguity for that is just in the fact that your good is not other people's bad, and your bad is not other people's good. And that, of course, has that gray zone in between. It's like, is this a square or is it a rectangle? It could, in fact, be both. You could find that there's a mix. It could, in fact, be a trapezoid. Or rhombus, actually. Trapezoid is completely equidistant or differently. And what that does, aside from my very lacking understanding of geometry, is it places yourself at a point where you have to determine, or you have to just figure out what you want to be about. And then I don't think you should surround yourself with people who agree with you. And that's why I mentioned that escapism and the idea of like hobbyism or just overall denial of that. And then also this whole wokeism thing is not necessarily something for everyone. Surround yourself with people that maybe are not always agreeable per se, but are understanding. If they're ignorant, try and teach, but don't be in a situation where you're continuously surrounded by ignorance to your lifestyle. And if it is something that is just so universally hated or so universally judged as being a bad decision or poor to the environment or harmful to those around you, etc., there's a very strong truth that there is some negativity to that, or negativity in the consequences that action might cause. Whoop. Well, apparently I just zoomed into my very messy room at the moment because I have just been like deathly ill for the last 3 days, like vomiting blood and everything. I didn't mean to do that, but I'm not going to edit that out because I'm just doing like a quick ramble video. Anyway, I think it's very important to find that and find your community. And I still don't know if I have the answer for myself. I think that for me, knowing that there's that encapsulated like gray zone is very challenging, but I don't know that a personal challenge is a bad thing. One final note, if you guys care, nobody does. I just want to say thank you for watching. I only have like 60 subscribers, honestly. It is not something that I intended to get any subscribers for. I mentioned this briefly. I started this video channel as a diary, basically. It was for I wanted to make videos for my mom because we didn't talk for like years, and I wanted to. She always video called me, and I'm at work. I never told the story, but I was just like, "Fuck, I'll call the bitch." And then one day I was just like, "All right, I'll just make like video for her." And then I lost a dare with at the time a close person of mine, and I originally gonna say wow, like Owen Wilson once every day in a video, and that's not gonna fucking happen because I'm not gonna fucking do that. But fuck that shit. But anyway, I will at probably New Year's have to do like 300 wows. Honestly, yeah, I've had some videos that actually like blew up for me. When I say blew up, I mean like 4,000 or 5,000 views, which is stupid. I know they're like clickbait titles and shit, but I still have engagement, which is fucking awesome. So if you by any fucking stretch got to stand or sit and listen to me, or just anything, thank you so much. I'm gonna be doing a lot more. I have to do this for another year, or well, I guess for like 2 more months, but I might keep it up. Either way, yeah, I just wanted to talk, I think, like, wokeism and escapism and just the overall idea of it coming up more and more is very important. So, yeah, I do hope, if you have any questions, like, at any time, feel free to comment. Aside from the guy who just, like, went through all my videos and just like, you're a fat ass, which I actually liked. You had some really good fucking jokes, by the way. I appreciate every single comment. I appreciate everything. So if you want to like make fun of my hair, I've got like really snaggly teeth because I had my face smashed into a brick wall when I was a kid. I'm blind in one eye, and I'm fat, and I'm circumcised. Like you could literally 90% of the world can make fun of me for something. So just go at it, man. But yeah, you guys are super cool. So thanks.